Okay, so let's get ready to rumble. Greetings, brothers and sisters. Um, that's the thing they say before those big boxing matches. I don't know why I said it. It just was in my behind. So it's the question is, which was the bigger hoax? What was the better, better performance and more? I don't know. Proof that the American people are just not worth saving, right? Was it Trump's convention, which featured the fake Ketchupgate, Band-Aid Gate, where they pretended he got shot in the air and he was pumping his fist and said, fight, fight, fight. All these people are calling him a badass. And then he did the WWE style final night where he was accepted nomination with Hulk Hogan and all the rest of it. Or was it Kamala Harris having this freedom joy fest where they kind of hijacked all the stuff that the Republican Party tries to run on and Trump is running on, and talk about how they're saving democracy by nominating a candidate that didn't get one vote. And there's some stuff with the Kennedy thing that's gonna segue into this later. Today's Saturday, August 24th, and the Kennedy right after the convention ended withdrew from these states, 10 battleground states, and supported Trump. And he really screwed over Kamala by she killing off her momentum she got from the DNC and changing the narrative and the storyline to what they were talking about. We'll get into that too. But in terms of what Kamala did, and what the DNC pulled off by saying they're saving democracy by electing a candidate or nominating a candidate that receives 0 votes for president ever, not just in this past primary, but in the last one. And with Kamala too, which I kind of was talking about in the last video, is that they had plenty of time, right? Because how long did we know Joe Magoo had dementia of some sort? Well, I knew in 2019. Like I said it, and I wasn't the only person. So they were running a guy that had obvious mental problems. And many of us, at least in the truth community, said, what are they doing here? How is this even possible? They think they can pull this off. Weekend at Bernie's, some guy whose brain is not functioning. And they executed it by hiding the guy away, right? Not with COVID, things like this. Kind of, they did a good job of whatever they did there, right? Covering up that the guy had Parkinson's for 4 years. But they, didn't do that good a job because the guy was falling off his bike and he was crapping his Depends diapers and, he was doing all the things that it was getting worse. And we knew it was going to happen. It was a ticking time bomb, right? Until the American people finally caught on. And after 3.5 years, they did, the American people. And, he had gotten significantly worse. And so they knew going into this primary season they couldn't run this guy. So they, in January they had a poll. And there's still time to do a primary. In fact, it was when the primaries were going. Withdraw the guy and run a primary. And they could have done it, a year earlier and pushed him out then, right? And say, look, you just can't do it. People see that you have this condition. They could have leaked that he had this condition, which wouldn't have been great for them. And that would have been the honest thing to do. But, they would have had to answer for the fact that he had the condition while he was in the Obama administration, right? Like he was already having signs of this when he was in the Obama administration. And then for 4 years, he retired because he, was really unfit for public office. And that's in 2016. And they exhumed him in 2019, right? And so that, they had plenty of time. And so they shouldn't have run him in the first place, but after running him, they had plenty of time to get rid of him, and they didn't. And so they said, all right, let's wait till the last minute and bypass a primary electoral process altogether and just put out a candidate who is really unlikable and, really wouldn't stand the test of time if she had to debate and do these things like what happened last time. Like we already saw what happened. She crapped the bed. Like people didn't like her. They rejected her. But we'll just put on this, performative, we'll hype her up at these rallies, and we'll just put on this illusion. And they bought it, right? Like the American Democratic party bought it, and like they're more enthusiastic about her than they were about Jojo Magoo, who of course they had senile, and so it means that they can do pretty much anything. But with Trump, Trump, his deception goes back all the way to 2019 when it became obvious he was completely owned and he got completely worked by the people that run the system. Any chance of him being an independent guy who, wasn't controlled by the beast should be thrown out when he did Operation Warp Speed, which was a disaster, which we all know. Like he got worked by that. Like, and he was bragging about it, saying he was the father of the vaccine. Like I showed you the memes before, right? And then he got worked by closing down the economy, which allowed him to lose the election because now they could hide Jojo Magoo by putting all those bogus things in, something that the Governor Walz was over the top on. He was even worse than America, like as a country was by his state. He wanted to go. He was encouraging people to spy on their neighbors, right, for going outside and violating the curfews and things like that, right? I mean, so this is part of what's happening. After he allowed the people to burn his city, right? I got a great little source. Somebody did they did that phone call with Walz and Kamala Harris. If you haven't seen it yet, it's kind of great. They did it, but they used AI to dub in some, funny stuff. And so, Trump got completely worked, and then the debacle on January 6th and all the stuff that he did, and then all the stuff that he did afterwards, and the stuff they did to him in terms of censorship, right? So Trump already proved he was not what he said he was. He was not this guy that was, he's a non-deep state person. But the Ketchupgate and this false flag thing that he did with, the whole thing, and pumping his fists and coming out like a hero, WWE style, like just for stupid people, and stupid people that include Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg and liberal Cenk Ayengar from the Young Turks even, that all called it badass, right? And it just shows you that the American people are not worth saving, right? Like the big winner in this thing is me, because I've been saying this forever, that the system is completely broken, the electoral system, and they can pretty much do anything because the people suck, right? Because the people just will allow it to happen. Like you could do this to the people now. I mean, you just might as well roll out AI candidates, manufacture fake people, and just create a persona, and they're not even real, and just say this is their upbringing, this is the kind of person they are, and their artificial intelligence, and a cartoon character hologram dances around on the freaking stage at the convention, like they're doing with pop stars now, creating AI pop stars, and just make it fake, like it's a video game, and you just manufacture something and a backstory and all these things. It doesn't have to be a real person. Kamala Harris changed her complete biography, left out her father completely, who was there in D.C. He's actually here in America, D.C., and he didn't show up to his daughter's big moment, like whatever bad blood there is there, and they didn't cover that at all. Like nobody even knows what that really is, right? I mean, they have probably some rumors and things, but the media's not covering it. Why wouldn't the media say, where's her frickin' dad? Her mom died, right? Where's her Jamaican dad? Like, why is he not here? And so the media is like so bad right now. Like they let big stories like Hunter Biden's story last time. The son of the vice president at the time had a crackhead son that had been in and out of rehab like 8 or 9 times by that point. Banged his hero's brother's widow for a couple of years while he was doing crack. Had all these jobs with foreign companies while smoking crack. Really, crack pretty much is a full-time job. Like, he's the best crack addict ever. Ended up writing a book about all this stuff, shortly after the election, I believe. And Jimmy Kimmel just, got on his knees and serviced the guy, talked about how brave and good he was for coming out with this crack book, right? And then he drops his laptop into the bathtub because he's so crackhead, he's smoking crack. He's always got all these hookers and strippers. And then it comes out that he had a stripper baby with a stripper from Arkansas named London who lived in Dallas. I'm sorry, a stripper named Dallas that lived in Arkansas named London, and they had sex at some high class strip joint in New York, and he impregnated her and didn't remember any of it, and that scandal broke, and they covered that up, and all these other things, the laptop, all these things, which isn't even a part of the campaign this time, even though he's now a convicted felon, right, for having all these problems he had with firearms. And so the media covered all that stuff up before the election, and then they've allowed Trump to roll out his Ketchupgate and things, and there's just nothing here. Like, there's nothing real here, right? Neither of these candidates represent what they claim to represent, and the American people just are lapping it up, right? They're actually enthused about this. Trumpers are enthused as ever, even though he's shown you exactly the kind of person he is. And the Ketchupgate, should be the nail in the coffin of his credibility, and Trumpers just go along with it. If you try to tell them, even not just Trumpers, people in the truth community are talking about how the deep state tried to take him down. People are supposed to be looking for truth and supposed to have critical thinking skills. It's just allowing this thing to be perpetrated on them, this obviously false flag thing that he did, which, whatever credibility he has left is now gone. And the Democrats, who have been saying now for the past, 6 years, that, since Trump was president, that the only way to save democracy is to get rid of him. And they ran a senile candidate a weekend at Bernie's candidate, and then, when he crapped out on him, they installed another candidate that nobody would elect through the normal process, and they're enthusiastically accepting her. And it's just, like she could be a Muppet. Like, she's just out there. She's not a good public speaker. She has a weird cadence. She's not, they just gave her all these taglines, all these talking points that were like bumper stickers. And she got up there and they pumped in a lot of enthusiasm at her rallies. And then she goes to the DNC and then everyone's just lapping it up. And they actually had a great convention with somebody who, by every measurable standard before this, would be unelectable as president because the Democrats completely rejected her. With a sea of bad candidates, she got less than 1%. I mean, nobody wanted her. The Democrats said, no, we don't want you. And they were trying to force her on. They liked her, and they were trying to force her on the Democratic voter. And the voter said, F you, we don't want her. And somehow they pushed her in there, and now they're like, oh, she's great. They have Kamala fans, and nobody really knows who she is, and the BS definitions they put out are completely false, which I covered in the convention I just covered, right? I've never really watched these conventions. Like, I covered a little bit of things like, little clips of the Bernie Sanders people turning against the convention in 2016, for example, right? I have these little things that I covered. But then the Ketchupgate happened. And, I was like, all right, I got to cover this convention. And I covered a little bits of it. I didn't watch the whole thing. And I waited for the last day when they brought Trump out with his bandage and his, wearing a maxi pad in his ear. And I had said right off the bat the thing looked WWE the first day it happened, the Ketchupgate, Band-Aid Gate. And I knew nothing about Trump's association with Hulk Hogan and WWE, and I had no idea he was going to appear. And then on the last night he appeared, and I covered that, like in an epic video I made, right? A couple of them. And, because that was the big moment where he was, going to come out to the fight stuff and, all of it. And, that's been a central piece of his campaign ever since. How that courageous moment. And Elon Musk spent, I don't know, a good 20 minutes talking about what a badass Trump was in that disastrously bad interview. And so, all right, I said, with that, I'll watch some of the DNC. And the DNC was even more interesting because, they had been campaigning, like I said, forever, that they were going to, save democracy by taking out Trump, who's going to be a dictator. And they installed a candidate who never received a vote. So, and this has been going on for a while because they rigged the election against Bernie Sanders with Hillary Clinton in 2015-16. And then they rigged the primary against Bernie Sanders again with Biden when he should have won that one. And then they rigged the whole thing with Trump in terms of the, all the things that happened with the general election. So they're the ones who, I mean, Trump, for all you say about him, is like he doesn't have the ability because he's not really a political guy. He doesn't have the political team. He doesn't have the intelligence community on his side. Like him in terms of he hasn't rigged any elections. Like he hasn't done anything to rig his election. He's tried to. He pushed pressure on that guy Brian Kemp to rig things in Georgia. I mean, Trump is willing to do it. He just doesn't have the ability. And he had enough enthusiasm and people that are willing to vote for him, stupidly. And the Democrats, they just don't, right? And they're not nominating candidates that, Trump was at least he pretended to be a far right winger. The enthusiasm the Democratic Party had was for Bernie Sanders and, some extent RFK Jr., which they excluded him too, which is another. I mean, for a group of people who call themselves the Democrats and are saying they're saving democracy, they're shitting on it every time they get a chance, right? And all the people buy this stuff. All the Trumpers buy Trump and his lies, and all the DNC people, the Democratic people, bought this stuff with Kamala Harris. They were told, hey, you don't like. They said to the Democratic Party, we don't like her. We will never vote for her. We're not into her. They clearly rejected her in 2019 before the 2020 election. And they said, all right, we'll repackage her. We'll make her vice president. We'll have her accomplish basically nothing. We'll make her the border czar, and she'll do an embarrassing job there. We'll have her cackle her way to like just being a joke, and nobody thinks that she's good. And then we'll get rid of the senile guy, and we'll install her, and you'll accept her, and you'll love it, right? It's like this whole thing where they're saying in 2030 you'll own nothing and you'll love it, right? The World Economic Forum, and the American people bought it. And so as long as there's an internet, as long as people are well fed, as long as people are, all these things, are pacified, they'll accept anything. There's nothing the American people won't accept, right? If it's packaged in the right way. And so, whatever happens with this election, it shows that the American people are as big a part of the problem as the controllers. They completely are, incapable of being like alive or being anything, which would be, which is completely hilarious. And, it makes you, I mean, for me, I know there's going to be a time where a lot of people are going to die. There's going to be a cleansing of the earth of the, plague of human beings, right? The overpopulation of human beings and the destruction of, just on every level that needs to happen. Like we're at a peak population and population has to be reduced. And, the majority of people are not worth saving because they're going in the wrong direction, right? Everybody who buys into some illusion like this politically and believing that's, they create these messiahs, right? I mean, Trump and Kamala Harris are messiahs, and they're like horrible people, and they're dumb, and they're like, they don't really have anything worth. There's no value to them. They're not, there's nothing. They're not contributors. They're takers, right? I mean, politicians in general are, but so are celebrities, and they're, propped up, and they create these fake narratives about how great these people are, and they're horrible people. They're not examples. Like you have examples of people that are being put out there that people look up to, people idolize and worship, like Taylor Swift, for example. But they're really bad people. And so what happens when you have really bad people and you have people who look up to them? Remember when Cardi B was really popping and she was just so crass and degraded, and young girls were all dressing like her and all, I mean, she was like an example, a role model for them. And so these are the people you aspire to be like. Of course people suck because they're heroes. They're not like spiritual saints or something, which would be optimal. Someone who's really higher above you in a higher level of consciousness. And if you had them as your idol, your goal, and you were looking up to those type of people, not, idol is not a good word, but as a goal, like if you had the Sajmark system I have, you find somebody who's higher on the spiritual evolutionary path than you are, and they become your goal. You want to, emulate them, and so you become better. You're taking somebody who's higher, who's evolved higher on a higher level, like a saint, and ultimately it would be, divinity itself, and the divinity that's within you, and you're cultivating that, right, the best part of you, and you're aspiring to be better, and you work on your character, and you work on your own personal hypocrisy and your own, bullshit, your own lies, and your ego and things, and you cleanse it, and you become the best version of yourself because you have examples of people who, when you have people you look up to, it could be your parents or it could be your grandparents or all of them, and you're in a tribal situation, you have good people with good characters, and as a kid you aspire to be like them, and that's how people get better because and even maybe go beyond them because your generations, each succeeding generation is better than the past. But when you put the worst people up there and you pretend that these bad people, and they create these lies and illusions, and these deviant people like Madonna and Will Smith and Ellen and Tom Hanks and all the Taylor Swift and Katy Perry and all these people like that, right? All the rock stars, all the these rock bands, Michael Jackson, all these people like that, right? And people look up to these people who are much lower than them. They're on a lower evolutionary path than the majority of people, at least higher developed souls. And so people who are saints and are really doing good work out there, they get ignored, and these flashy manufactured celebrities, and like people, even people brand themselves on the internet. They pretend to be something they're not in their own social media profiles, and everybody's like looking up and aspiring to be like them, and it doesn't work, right? The whole thing doesn't work. It's just an illusion, and we know it now, right? We know that this doesn't panned out because we've seen how people are the idiocracy and have been just degraded. Like people are much worse than they used to be, and they keep on aspiring to be like low life people that are not only should, I mean, probably should be in jail or not even allowed to exist, and instead they're celebrated. Right? So it's it's worshiping of the lower, and that's what's happened, and because of that all these other things have happened as well. So good, let's get into it here. Of course, this channel is suffering from the whole, I don't know, suffering, whatever, from being shadow banned for years, which I've talked about in all my videos recently. And the ways to combat that is to like the videos. I mean, that's the easiest thing to do. Let YouTube know that you like the video. And then, of course, comment. It could be something as easy as an emoji, which is, just letting YouTube know that you're engaged with the content. If you get unsubscribed, resubscribed, hit the notification buttons. Of course, supporting the channel through the membership program is also, necessary. The membership program, without it, I couldn't make content anymore because YouTube ads, even in an election year, aren't, doing enough for me. And also there's merch. But let's get into the stuff. I got to cover the Kennedy stuff, a lot of leftover things that have been, I'm glad to, I was going to say, so I never really covered a convention. I don't like to watch the whole Oscars. I'll cover little bits and pieces of the Oscars. But sitting down watching the whole Oscars, and I didn't watch the convention. I, fast forward through various speeches and watch little bits and pieces, and then, watch the big people, the big names and whatever. But the Democratic convention, I mean, I spent more time on this than I have on anything recently, and you guys can see it from I covered all 4 days, and it was a disaster, an absolute freak show, and they're saying that this is evolution, that they're progress. They're heading towards, an eyes wide shut, Hunger Games type of, like elite level, just decadence that is going to be rolled out to everybody. Where the stuff that the elite have been getting into, the people I call the controllers, that have been, delving into this demonic, ritualistic type of immoral behavior. And now average people are getting into it. We've seen that in the past 4 years. Of course, those people are worthless. Like they can't hold a job. They can't contribute. They just indulge. They're self-indulgent. And so the elite level people, they somehow create a system where wealth is funneled into their families, and as the royal family, and they just get more and more demonic and more decadent, and they have nothing but free time to indulge in these like demonic pleasures. And you can't have everybody do that, right? The only reason they could do that is the hardworking people that are propping them up, right? But when everybody gets into those type of behaviors, like you have average people who are like doing like hard labor, working 12 hours a day, and doing like manual labor, and their kids start coming home with painted fingernails, and they got these deviant type of sexual appetites and behaviors, like it's happening on with kids getting addicted to this deviant porn and unnatural sexual appetites or whatever it is, right? Like you have all these things that is happening, and those kids can't hold jobs. We already see it. They can't hold a job at any of these, like a fast food place. They can't hold a job at Burger King. Like these, kids' jobs that we did when we were in high school and college and things, right? Like kids can't do that. There's all these open jobs. Those kids they can't sustain that level of work because they're living these eyes wide shut internet, video game realities, and they don't have the ability to put in a 4-hour shift at frickin' McDonald's, right? Like this is how bad things have gotten. And so these kids are like basically worthless. If they can't do a job at McDonald's, how are they going to run a company? Like how are they going to do something real, right? So they're just going to plug back into their video games. They can't even step into the real world for a long enough period of time to do a job, because they're all like these, they're living the deception and the level of these, indulgent elite type people, and the morality they have, and the disconnect from a family and anything wholesome and anything good and natural, and any kind of character qualities and ethics and stuff that they would get through, living a site. Again, not that America's been great for, my lifetime, but we've been headed in the wrong direction. And people have become softer and weaker and less natural for the past, hundreds of years. And certainly in the last so many years, the last 50 years, it's really gone south. And so this is a result. That's why our society has to collapse, because there's no one there to prop it up. There's, you're trying to import, poor people from other countries to do the jobs that the people in this country can't do anymore, right? Which is pretty much all the jobs. And then having computers replace the other part, right? So you got you have immigrant labor coming into doing the manual labor jobs, and then computers taking away the blue collar jobs. And now you just have a population that's just indulging without contributing anything to society. You just have the ultimate consumers, and a debt-based economy that's on the verge of collapsing and sending us back to the dark ages. And so let's get into it here. Okay, so let's get into it here. This is something put out by Huffington Post that YouTube recommended to me. I was going to start with the Kennedy stuff, but this is leftover stuff from the DNC. RNC versus DNC roll calls, right? And I just want to say I'm seeing a lot of comments like from Republicans and Trumpers talking about how bad the Democrats are. The reason the Democrats are getting away with what they're getting away with and what they're doing is because of Trump. Trump has allowed them to degrade their side of the thing. By Trump being so degraded and so he didn't follow the decorum and which I was glad for. Like it's all bullshit, right? But he, Trump being just Trump, and the Republicans, the Trumpers just following Trump, and that he can do no wrong, has allowed the Democrats to lower their level, like to even lower. And so without Trump, they couldn't do that. I mean, this is all about Trump. Everything that you see, Trump is the catalyst. Trump is the centerpiece of all of this stuff, right? The movement, the hyperized liberal movement and degraded stuff that they're doing, and Trump's allowed them to just break from tradition, right? And this is a case of that. So it starts here.
We want to remind all our delegates, our alternates, and guests that maintaining order during the roll call is extremely important.
It is our honor to cast 31 votes for our next president, Donald J. Trump.
So this thing sucks. Like, nobody watches it, right? But it is the political process. It's boring and it's unwatchable. It's not sexy or entertaining, right? And, it is like what the Republicans are going to want to stick to, but it was unwatchable. And so because of Trump and the Democrats having this, everything that Trump stands for, everything that the Republicans stand for is evil, they've been able to do this part here.
If the convention is not in order, it's difficult for the secretary or presiding officer to hear the vote announcement.
Georgia, how do you cast your vote?
Yeah! Ladies and gentlemen, we are here tonight to officially nominate Kamala Harris for president. Five, get loud, another round of shots. DNC, turn out for what?
In the spirit of good trouble, Georgia cast 123 votes for the next president of the United States, Kamala Harris.
So that is more entertaining. And you could say, well, wow, they're breaking from decorum. Yeah. But your guy Trump already did that. Like, Trump was tweeting in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning. He wasn't acting presidential, right? And it was great. Like, but now the Democrats have seen that. It's just like what happened with Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton got caught, engaging with sexual behavior with an intern, 18-year-old intern in the White House, and lied about it and was impeached and still held his job. And before that, that was unthinkable, right? When I grew up, before the Bill Clinton stuff, like, that was all fireable offenses. And because he did that, Trump was able to do all this stuff, all these shenanigans and get impeached and survive it, right? And so, like, the level of decorum, the level of, standards, it's all BS, it's all pretentious. You don't like either one of these things, right? But one's, sort of demonic and the other one's like boring demonic, right? They're both fake. They're not real. The government is, just a construct. If you're not bowing before God and receiving your instructions from some sort of a spiritual connection, then it's demonic, right? If you're not following the laws of the divine universe, and if you're not connecting to the divinity within you, to something that's higher than you, then it's always going to go this way, right? And both these things are bad examples because one's life sucking, and the other one's like some demonic, party, right?
In Wyoming, the cowboy state, is Trump country. We've supplied the highest margin of victory for President Trump in both 2016 and 2020. And with that, Wyoming, the cowboy state, casts all of its 29 delegates for President Donald J. Trump.
We are honored to be representing the great state of Wyoming. Both the first state and territory in this nation to recognize a woman's right to vote, and the state that 100 years ago elected Democrat Nellie Taylor Ross, our nation's first female governor. With that legacy in mind and heart, the Equality State cast all of our votes for the woman who will be the first woman president of the United States. Say it with me now, Kamala Harris!
There's nothing pro-life about letting women suffer and even die. Today, because I found a way to access abortion care, I am pregnant again.
Woo! Woo! When are you going to kill that one? Woo! When are you going to kill that one? Are you going to have a party?
And my baby is due in January, just in time to see Kamala Harris sworn in as President of the United States.
My name is Jean Evansmore, and I'm 83 years old.
This one was particularly bad, right? This is the oldest of the youngest in West Virginia, which is, West Virginia.
And as such, I am the oldest of the delegates in West Virginia.
My name is Catherine Prather. I am 18 years old, and I am the youngest delegate from West Virginia. We're proud to cast West Virginia's 24 delegates for the next President of the United States, Kamala Harris!
Turn out for what?
So, obviously young people are going to gravitate to the demonic party, right? Although at some point they're going to be craving things that are more wholesome and family-oriented. But the Republicans, it's just fake decorum. It's not, it's not real. It's just this whole elitist kind of stuff. And so they both suck, right? Like they both are not a reflection of people's connection to divinity. Government's gotten so big and it's become God. Like government and, the country itself has become God. People worship. Patriotism is a form of religion. And, all of the political process is a part of this. And these political scumbags are heroes, like I said earlier. And none of it works. Like none of it's effective. Because, they're not that, right? Okay, so I'm in the editing process. Something like astounding where I was like blown away at how degraded it was. There was an interview between a CNN reporter and Howard Dean about Kamala Harris not doing interviews, and Dean's basically saying, "Oh, she doesn't have to do interviews with mainstream media." And I got the clip. I'm going to show you this at the beginning of my next video. But it's so astounding. Like I see shit all the time, and I'm usually not fazed, but I'm like, I can't believe they're saying this, right? But it's because everything's become so degraded. And, Trump was a part of that. Bill Clinton was a part of that. I mean, I've seen this being degraded over my lifetime, right? So this is Sunday, August 25th. I'm editing here. And this video won't be out till tomorrow, and I won't get to the other one until like Wednesday, but I'm like chomping at the bit to talk about it, right? But everything's so degraded. So the roll call is procedural. Right now, they've glammed it up because they've made these conventions into these. I mean, they were even talking about this being like the Oscars and being entertainment on MSNBC or CNN. Like how much they made it into. Of course, Trump brought out Hulk Hogan. I mean, Trump brought out these dumbasses. My wife and I were talking about this, right? That they're these dumbasses. Like Hulk Hogan doesn't appeal to smart people. Kid Rock doesn't appeal to smart people, right? I mean, you might like a Kid Rock song or something, but in terms of his consciousness and his fans and, how he presents and all these guys, WWE, this, violent kind of stuff that they push out there, right? It's not for smart people. What Kamala Harris did here is not for smart people. It's not for critical thinking people. It's not for people who would ask, legitimate questions. It's not people who have any sort of personal depth. It's not for people above double-digit IQs. They're both pandering to stupid people. Like there's nothing here for smart people in any of these conventions, right? And that stuff is the stuff that's smart stuff that has some depth or some substance. They quickly move through it. And, the Democrats and Republicans are both guilty of glamorizing, glamming this thing up, right? But you have these guys, these like presidential historians. There's that one clown, I forget his name, it doesn't matter. Maybe Beshlaw is his name or something. And these guys have come on CNN and MSNBC and slammed Trump for degrading the presidency. But what the Democrats just did to this roll call is procedural. It's a it's a part of democracy where the votes of these delegates, right? And so you go and vote in a primary. Let's say you live in Florida and they have 100 delegates, right? One of the bigger states, whatever. Some of these smaller states, they have 25 delegates based in your population. So a delegate relates to the House of Representatives, like they get a representative for every 30,000 people, something like that, right? And for delegates, it's like every 32,000 people. So you vote in a primary for a candidate, the Democratic primary, Republican primary, and your vote is assigned to a delegate that is going to vote for that candidate, right? So there's 30,000 people that want Bernie Sanders or whatever, whatever the other candidates are. And so let's say you get so many votes, and so you won this many delegates. So you're a presidential candidate, you won this many delegates, and so you assign those delegates who are going to vote for you. So the votes were for you to get those delegates, and you choose the delegates, and the delegates are people that you expect to be loyal to you, and they're going to vote for you at the convention. And they have to have like a good reason to switch their votes, right? Like it's not something they could just do, but they can do that, right? And so these delegates represent the choices of the American people in a democracy. And of course, all these delegates were Joe Biden delegates that he released to Kamala Harris. And he said, all right, you guys vote for Kamala now because she's going to be our party's representative. But, and you can say, well, they kind of voted for Kamala anyway because she was the vice president, but there was no real primary. And so Joe Biden ran unopposed, so that was undemocratic. Even though there was all these people that were like, he's too old, we got to get rid of him. And they decided to, force Kennedy out, which we'll get into with Kennedy. I got a whole thing with Kennedy, right, coming up. And so, the Democratic Party is trying to be the party that's saving democracy, but this is obviously not that. So this is a procedural vote count where the delegates show up and say, okay, this is who we're voting for, and then you choose your nominee for the party. And it's a two-party system where being a third-party candidate, as you'll hear from Kennedy, is next to impossible. And so they have a monopoly on this thing, and that's undemocratic. And this system is, this is the way that they do it. There's procedural things, procedural is a key word here, that are a part of a legal system, that's got bylaws and laws and constitutional aspects to it, and this is part of that. And so they have to do the roll call, and these states have to say, yes, these are the amount of delegates that are voting for this candidate, these are the amount of delegates that are voting for that candidate, right? And so because they just handpicked Kamala Harris after having a closed primary for Joe Biden, right, where there wasn't really very many votes and things, I mean, there wasn't enough votes to go around to all these delegates because they didn't do a real primary, so nobody really voted. And so Joe Biden got 60 million votes or something. And that's, a lot less than the amount of delegates that are chosen. But anyways, these delegates show up, based in whatever percentages that are there. And they are going to vote for Kamala Harris because they've all, agreed to that, in an undemocratic process, right? But I'm saying all this because a lot of this governmental shit is boring. I did this little bit about this judge in England sentencing some guy for something he posted on Facebook for like 2 years. And he was just criticizing immigrants in a way that's, you could say was like semi-racist, but certainly wasn't worth jail time, right? But he had that weird-ass wig on. They wear these wigs, these white wigs. They're still doing that shit, after, all of it. And it's just weird, right? But they have these procedural aspects to government. And it's boring as fuck. Like, some people could get into it and watch it, but, you have to be somebody like a governmental nerd to really enjoy it. And that's why nobody watches these conventions. They don't watch the roll call, and the roll call doesn't take place in prime time, right? And so there's a reason why it's boring, because it's supposed to be boring. It's procedural. And the Republicans have tried to jazz it up too, but, they've made it performative. But, at least they're keeping it, somewhat procedural. The Democrats said fuck the procedure because they already said fuck the voting, right? They've already said they're not going to even bother doing a primary, and they're not going to replace Kamala, replace Joe Biden with a primary and these things. And they're just installing her, and she's not doing interviews, and they're just ramrodding this thing across with a lot of celebrity and glitz and glamour and all this stuff with a candidate that nobody really liked, but there's so much hatred for Trump, and she doesn't really have a platform, and nobody knows who she is, and she lied about her. They manufactured her identity and her history, just like they did what Joe Biden tried to do with the plagiarizing. And it's, it's so bad, right? Like, it's just, it's degraded. And the problem is people are degraded, and they can't stand things that are boring and procedural. Like, if you're going to get into democracy, and most people don't care about it, then you should sit through the roll call. If you're a real patriot, you should be able to sit, they're talking about being patriots and being, these wonderful Americans. The Democrats were trying to hijack that stuff. The Republicans always try to, grab. But most of these dummies don't have the ability to understand what's going on with democracy. They can't even explain their fucking democracy to you. So how can they be patriots? How can they be people that are into the democratic process when they can't even, they can't even explain how the process works, and they didn't pay attention in history class because they're dumbasses, and now they're bored by all that, right? And so when moral degradation sets in, which it has here in America, you have this kind of stuff. And it's happened in religions, right? Remember, religions did want to permit divorce, but they had Henry VIII was killing his wives, and they just killed their wives instead. I mean, these brutal kings and all this stuff that goes on with these demonic royal families. And he, created they created their own church there in England and went for divorce, right? And the Catholics were losing people to the Protestants because people were like, hey, they let you get divorced over there. And so they let these things in that go against the teachings and go against the fundamental principles. This is happening in the Sajmarg meditation that I do, where this clown Dodgy has watered down the system and dumbed it down and to bring more people in, but he sucks so bad they're not even bringing more people in, and the people they're bringing in are not spiritual, and there's a degradation, and what was great about the system is lost. But the weakness that's set into our culture and our country and our world, where kids can be just remedial and suck, and you're going to give them a trophy anyway, right? And so instead of you holding the standard of something and keeping it pure and, difficult and boring and procedural and whatever it might be, instead of doing that, what they're doing is bringing in degraded, low-level entertainment crap and, glitz and glamour and all these things to make it appeal to a generation of young people that have limited attention spans and need to be stimulated every 15 seconds or whatever, and have an attention span that's lower than a goldfish, and they just keep on dumbing down everything. This is the idiocracy aspect in Kamala Harris's candidacy, along with Trump's fake, Ketchupgate thing with his WWE crap. That's just dumbing everything down and bringing it down to a lower level instead of having people rise up and actually learn about what their responsibilities are as a citizen and, learning what their consciousness level has to be. No, let's just, throw out a bunch of let's put a bunch of cute cat videos in here, like on YouTube, for YouTube, like something like that, right? Let's put a bunch of clickbait shit in here. And so, that they'll watch this thing that's lost all its meaning and all its, all of its decorum and things because people are too stupid to frickin' understand what their system is, right? And this is this is what we're seeing. Okay, let's get back into the original video here.
I'd like to introduce everyone.
So let's watch a little bit of RFK thing here.
Wars. We were the party of labor, of the working class. The Democrats were the party of government transparency and the champion of the environment. Our party was the bulwark against big money interests and corporate power. True to its name, it was the party of democracy. As you know, I left that party in October because it had departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech.
Yeah, but so is the Republican Party. The Republican Party, the Republican Party is worse on big pharma than the Democrats. The Republicans have voted against bills that would limit, the prescription drug prices, which, the Democrats went all in on big pharma for the and for COVID. And so they're both horrible on big pharma. And they've all allowed big pharma. The only thing that either party's done or the government or the legal system has done is give slaps on the wrist. I gave the example of the, Purdue Pharmacy, the Sackler family, making $10 billion and having to pay $5 billion after they created the opioid epidemic. No one's going to jail for them lying about this. They're saying this is not addictive, and then people getting addicted to it, right? That's big pharma. They get a slap on the wrist, just like big banks and the rest of them. They do illegal shit, and then they have to pay a small fine. Nobody goes to jail. And both the Democrats and Republicans support it. It's silly to say that there's ever been, I mean, maybe at some point there was less of this corruption, but now it's just full blown.
Big ag and big money. When it abandoned democracy by canceling the primary to conceal the cognitive decline of the sitting president, I left the party to run as an independent. The mainstream of American politics and journalism derided my decision. Conventional wisdom said that it would be impossible even to get on the ballot as an independent because each state poses an insurmountable tangle of arbitrary rules for collecting signatures. I would need over 1 million signatures, something no presidential candidate in history had ever achieved. And then I'd need a team of attorneys and millions of dollars to handle all the legal challenges from the DNC. The naysayers told us that we were climbing a glass version of Mount Impossible. So the first thing I want to tell you is that we proved them wrong. We did it because...
But you can tell he's proven them wrong by withdrawing from being a candidate. You know, I said this right off the bat because, well, his big thing was when he slathered all over Rabbi Shmuley, who's a scumbag rabbi. You know, his daughter sells kosher dildos, right? Like that guy. And he just, demonized the Palestinian people and talked about Israel in a way that, like, nobody does. Like, he was worse than any other candidate. It was, like, despicable given him being, he was right on a bunch of things, right? He was good on the environment. He was good on the bloop. He was good on all that stuff. And so, but he, when he did the thing on Israel, but the other part was he was saying he was going to win. I'm like, if you were really this guy, they'd never let you win. Like, they can't afford truther. Like, not that he is a truther, but what he was pretending to be and what people were celebrating about him. I'm like, even when I said I would consider voting for him before he did this thing on Israel, I knew that he wasn't going to win. They would never let somebody who isn't completely owned and handled. The system's completely rigged, right? And so he had no chance. He was talking about how he was going to win. I'm like, yeah, there's no chance of that. Like, there's nothing in the system that would allow somebody like this to win. And then not that he's somebody like this, but somebody pretending to be like this, right? Even a pretender, they're not going to let win, right?
Is beneath the radar of mainstream media organs, we inspired a massive independent political movement. More than 100,000 volunteers sprang into action, hopeful that they could reverse our nation's decline. Many worked 10-hour days, sometimes in blizzards and blazing heat.
Blizzards and blazing heat, depending on where you are.
Sacrificed family time, personal commitments, and sleep month after month, energized by...
Yeah, I could have told you that's a waste, right? Or you could have listened to what I said years ago, before you started doing this, that you had no chance of successfully completing this.
Shared vision of a nation healed of its divisions. They set up tables at churches and farmers markets. They canvassed door to door. In Utah and in New Hampshire, volunteers collected signatures in snowstorms, convincing each supporter to stop in the frigid cold, to take off their gloves, and to sign legibly.
Oh, my God. The trauma.
During a heat wave in Nevada, I met a tall, athletic volunteer who cheerfully told me that he had lost 25 pounds collecting signatures in 117-degree heat. To finance this effort, young Americans donated their lunch money, and senior citizens...
Lunch money? So you were relying on lunch money to eventually go out there and support Trump after trying to, broker a deal with Kamala? Like, they were giving their lunch money, and they're out there 117-degree heat, and this is what you're leaving them with, right?
Gave up part of their Social Security checks. Our 50-state organization collected those millions of signatures and more. No presidential campaign in American political history has ever done that. And so I want to thank all of those dedicated volunteers and congratulate the campaign staff who coordinated this enormous logistical feat.
This failure, you mean, right?
Your accomplishments
Failure.
were regarded as impossible.
To fail on this scale.
You carried me up that glass mountain. You pulled off a miracle. You achieved what all the pundits said could never be done. You have my deepest gratitude, and I'm never going to forget that, not just for what you did for my campaign, but for the sacrifices you made because you love our country.
To fail because the system's completely rigged, which, you know, everybody knows but you, right?
You showed everyone that democracy is still possible here. It continues to survive in the press and in the idealistic human energies that still thrive beneath the canvas of neglect and of official.
Just you're a walking testament to that not being true. Well, let him get into it here.
And institutional corruption. Today, I'm here to tell you that I will not allow your efforts to go to waste. I'm here to tell you that I will leverage your tremendous accomplishments to serve the ideals that we share, the ideals of peace, of prosperity, of freedom, of health, all the ideals that motivated my campaign. I'm here today to describe the path forward that you've opened with your commitment and with your hard labors. Now, in an honest system.
Wait, you had to clear his throat and it had no effect.
I believe that I would have won the election in a system the kind that my father and my uncles thrived in, a system with open debates, with fair primaries, with regularly scheduled debates, with fair primaries, and with a truly independent media untainted by government propaganda and censorship, in a system of nonpartisan courts and election boards.
Yeah, so you're admitting what I told you when you first started doing this, that the system is rigged and there's no way you could possibly win. You know, like this is what I've been saying the whole time, and not just about Kennedy. Like, you know, like what I had said back when I thought like he was, you know, he was worthy of support is that he was as close to a truther as you're going to get, and he isn't going to win, but, you know, it's just like you throw it out there, you vote or do whatever to give the guy a chance, right? But then once he got kicked out of the Democratic primary and the party, and they were obviously rigging the thing to what you now see with Kamala, and of course everything with Trump, right? That, you know, there just was no chance. And it was a waste of time, especially after he said that shit about Israel. It didn't matter because he just exposed himself as being a piece of shit, right? But even in all that, like he got all these people to do all this work so they could change the goalposts again, right? Like they're just never going to let you even be on the ballot. Never mind, even if he was on the ballot in all 50 states, he had no chance of winning. You know, they have billions of dollars of ad money, and people just don't think a third party could win. Like people are just programmed to, you have two choice, you have a binary choice, and a third party isn't on the menu. You know, that's 80% of Americans would never vote for a third party candidate. And so they don't want to waste their vote, right? So my wife and I just went for a walk with the dogs, and we were talking about this a little bit, and I want to expand on this, right? Because, you know, people aren't going to get it. You know, why is it that Trump opened the door for the Democrats to do what they're doing now by degrading the presidency? And so to understand this, you got to understand there's two types of truthers that present information out there. And I started off being the first, and I realized the error of my ways, and now have worked to be the second. And the first kind of truther just posts anything without vetting it, without, you know, being a real person, a real truth seeker. Just post anything that supports their worldview, whether it's true or not. And so maybe some of the stuff they post is good truther stuff, or at least is better than the official story. But they also post bullshit, which the Republican truthers always do, without making sure it's true, and they don't care if it's true or not. They're like, well, the other side's evil, so even if I'm lying, it's okay. The Democrats are evil, so if I post something that's deceptive, and it's not that you're deceiving the Democrats and the Kamala supporters, you're deceiving your own people. And that's the kind of person Trump is. Like, I recognize myself doing that. Like, picking the pictures like that just agreed with my worldview or the narrative that I was trying to create, right? And not ignoring the evidence that was against the narrative that I was trying to create. And that's not being somebody with critical thinking skills. It's not being a truth person. I did it without being conscious of it. But when I became conscious of it, I said, well, that's not correct. I should also state whatever the other side believes, as much as I could. Like explain the other side's position based on the way their worldview is and what they see. Because that's also important, right? Just in terms of you can't really dispute something or debate it if you don't understand it. But Trump came in and posted any sort of conspiracy theory, any kind of alternative narrative that supported him. Sometimes they were contradictory what he posted. And he didn't vet them, he didn't, look into them. And it hurt all of us in the truth community, right? He would just make up things, but to his base they were eating it up. And people who thought they were truthers were like, oh, he agrees with me, and they would just believe him. Oh, if Trump said it, he's a legitimate source. He's running for president. He wouldn't just bullshit us like that, right? But he's a bullshitter. He's not a truther. And there's a big difference between a bullshitter and a truther, right? A truther has standards and has a conscience and has, integrity. And a bullshitter just posts whatever bullshit they, that'll get them views or, whatever. There's a lot of bullshitters out there, right? And everyone's a little bit of a bullshitter on the internet. So there's that. But Trump is a real bullshitter. And when he started to do that, the Democrats, just like with Fox News, like Fox News came out and they were like, we're not even going to pretend to be, we're going to say we're fair and balanced. And we're going to get this guy Combs out there to pretend to be a liberal. Remember that Combs and Hannity and Combs? But in reality, they were just full conservative, full right wing. And they were, jading. They were propagandists, right? And MSNBC and CNN were trying to be legitimate journalists. And Fox was hammering them because the people who watch CNN and MSNBC, they wanted left stuff. They didn't want, they didn't want fair and balanced. They already thought that the right was evil, and they hated Fox News. And so MSNBC and CNN eventually learned that they needed to be just like Fox. And so Fox made MSNBC and CNN go to the dark side because they were trying to pretend at least to be journalistic, right? To be fair and balanced, but they weren't. They weren't, and, they knew that they couldn't get ratings if they did. And then along came Trump, who they could just out and out demonize because he just made stuff up, which hurt everybody in the truth community because he was just like bullshitting all the time. He wasn't, being a truther who was concerned about the truth. He was just somebody who was self-aggrandizing, and, he knew that these truther takes were hot and sexy for, his base that would eat them up, would lap them up, right? But they were, pissing off the left and the left media and the Democrats. And now the Democrats are like, well, if the right will believe this bullshit, then we can just make stuff up. We don't even have to elect a candidate. We can just roll Kamala out and, put her in all this hype and all this, like, just create this hoax, and people buy into it because the right buys into Trump, right? And so, like, Trump degraded the whole process. And the hatred for Trump made the left even more likely to accept Kamala or anybody else who was, as long as they weren't Trump, right? And so they've created their own energy and enthusiasm as anti-Trump people, and they've created their own line of bullshit, right? And so all you right-wingers and you Trumpers got to realize that you fucked the system by backing this clown. Even though it was funny, I enjoyed it. Like, I loved it when Trump was first introduced because he made a mockery of the system, and the system is a lie anyway because they're all bullshitters, but there's lines that they weren't willing to cross. There was lines of decorum, there was lines of, political process. And now the media and the DNC and the RNC have just crossed these lines, right? Like they've gone way past what should have been unacceptable, right? Like Bill Clinton banging an intern in the Oval Orifice, and then not banging her because it was, weird stuff that he did, right? Like it wasn't like, it was, weird kind of just, you remember what it was, right? But him getting away with that just degraded the whole presidency to another level, and getting caught lying about it in just a complete, horrible way. And so they've slowly eroded any sense of accountability and, rational thought and, like decorum or any kind of standards. And this is what you get, right? And Trump was a big part of it. And now the Democrats have taken it to a new level. And so this is what this Kennedy thing is. And the system is completely rigged against people because people are stupid, dumbed down, worthless. There should be no democracy because I don't trust the people I see with Walmart or the sheeple I see online or even most of the truthers. I wouldn't trust their decision making. Like the majority of people, I would say there's probably, I don't know, I mean, if maybe 20%, like that'd be generous, of the people out there, I trust their decision making, right? I mean, we all trust people's decision making when we get on the road, that they'll obey the traffic laws. We go to a restaurant, we trust the decision making that people aren't going to spit in your food or, throw cook some, chicken or something that's way past due and serve it anyway. But I worked at a restaurant that they did that. Like they had these boneless chicken breasts sitting there for like a week, and they were looking pretty salmonella-y. And I was like, you guys got to throw this stuff out. You can't serve this to people. They're like, no, we can't, we're hard times, bro. And they were serving stuff like that, right? Like the guy who owned that restaurant, I've talked about that guy. Like he had this, like, sort of, brutish, she was kind of a brute, his wife. He was foreign. Like he was, I think he's Hungarian, but he lived in Sweden or something. And his wife was, she had dark hair and she was like 5 foot, but, really stocky. And she walked by us and he said, I used to date beautiful women. Now I have hard worker, right? Like this kind of guy, right? And, he had 2 vegetarian meals in Northampton, Massachusetts, which is a very liberal. There's a 5 college area in Massachusetts with, and Northampton's right near Smith College. Smith College it's known for, is a women's school that has a high density of like lesbians. And there's all these vegetarians in that area. And he had 2 vegetarian dishes, and one of them was made with beef stock. And, I became a vegetarian for a little bit afterwards because of the meditation, but, I wasn't then, but I still felt like it was wrong to serve a dish that, was the more popular of the 2 vegetarian meals. And so people go, which one of these vegetarian meals would you get? And I would say, I would get the one without beef stock because, that's not vegetarian. And so like that's, you trust people to not do shit like that, right? But the majority of people are not trustworthy. They don't have a moral compass. They don't have integrity. They don't have a work ethic, and they don't make good decisions. And I wouldn't trust the majority of people to pick a president because they're incapable of doing such a thing. I mean, that's sad, but that's the case. It wasn't probably when I grew up, but even then, there's lots of sheeple. And, and now there's sheeple in the truth community. Like the truth community is 80% sheeple. And so, all the Trumpers are true, sheeple. And so, it's all just a lie. And so let's get back to the Kennedy thing here.
Everything would be different. After all, the polls consistently showed me beating each of the other candidates, both in favorability and also in head-to-head matchups. But I'm sorry to say that while democracy may still be alive at the grassroots, it has become little more than a slogan for our political institutions, for our media, and for our government, and most sadly at all for me,
Told you.
the Democratic Party. In the name of saving democracy, the Democratic Party set itself to dismantling it, lacking confidence in its candidate, that its candidate could win in a fair election at the voting booth. The DNC waged continual legal warfare against both President Trump and myself.
Yeah, but they did that before. They did it with Hillary Clinton against Bernie Sanders. I've been covering this, bro. Like, where have you been, right? Like, you're late to the party for a guy who's into politics. They've been rigging it. The system's always been rigged, but now it's even more so. Like, there's only a handful of people that actually can run for president. Like, legally, we all can, if we're not felons, right? But, in reality, it's only a handful of people. And they have to get the backing of the money and the people. They have to knee pad to the right people, right?
Each time that our volunteers turned in those towering boxes of signatures needed to get on the ballot, the DNC dragged us into court, state after state, attempting to erase their work and to subvert the will of the voters who had signed those petitions.
So this is hilarious. This is one of the things I wanted to point out. I made reference to it in the introduction. I said this to my wife last night. So the DNC, that is saying Trump is the person, the Republicans are the people who are trying to disenfranchise voters. Like the DNC wants you to vote even without having an ID. Like they want anybody to walk in and vote multiple times, and the paper ballots and these things to be counted. They want as many votes, people to vote as many. They want to get the numbers of votes up, and they want to have a high turnout, right? And they want to make it easier and easier for people to vote. And the RNC wants to set more standards and get rid of some of these votes because they know they're going to be, especially targeting the inner city and the areas where the Democrats, get the majority of their votes, right? And so then Kennedy comes along. The Democrats are like, "Oh, you got to prove to me those signatures are real," which is like almost impossible for him to do, right? And so like they just, again, the hypocrisy is off the charts for these guys.
It deployed DNC-aligned judges to throw me and other candidates off the ballot and to throw President Trump in jail. It ran a sham primary that was rigged to prevent any serious challenge to President Biden. Then, when a predictably bungled debate performance precipitated the palace coup against President Biden, the same shadowy DNC operatives appointed his successor, also without an election. They installed a candidate who was so unpopular with voters that she dropped out in 2020.
He's saying the things that I always say, right? But, he's saying them now. Like I said them years ago, like, and through the whole process. But now,
Without winning a single delegate. My uncle and my father.
Not that I'm like saying I'm great or something, just it's easy to see the truth. Especially if you don't have any personal prejudice and you don't have some fake hope in a party that is, both parties are corrupt, right? It's easy to see it. When you're detached from it, it's completely easy to see it, right? But then this guy goes and begs both of these parties for a job or some influence. Like when he realizes, oh, I got screwed, but I've created some grassroots and I'm kind of, have some people that are supporting me. What are you guys going to give me for throwing these guys your way, right? Two corrupt parties. And he's like, well, because he asked Kamala, and Kamala wouldn't meet with him. And so, like, I'll get into that when we get into the narrative.
Father both relished debate. They prided themselves on their capacity to go toe-to-toe with any opponent in the battle over ideas. They would be astonished to learn of a Democratic Party presidential nominee who, like Vice President Harris, has not appeared in a single interview or an unscripted encounter with voters for 35 days. This is profoundly undemocratic. How are people to choose when they don't know whom they are choosing? And how can this look to the rest of the world? My father and my uncle were always conscious of America's image abroad because of our nation's role as the template for democracy, the role model for democratic processes, and the leader of the free world. Instead of showing us her substance and character, the DNC and its media organs engineered a surge of popularity for Vice President Harris based upon, well, nothing. No policies, no interviews, no debates, only smoke and mirrors and balloons.
Which, again, was brought to you by Trump, right? Like, they've used Trump. This is how they've used Trump all along. To make, the Democrats said, yeah, we rigged it. Like, some Democrats came out, like some guy in some interview, some, insider, said, yeah, we rigged it, but we had to because Trump is horrible. And so they, they're saying the American people are not capable of picking the president, which is true, because look at the American people and look at what they've done here with Trump and Kamala. And so the process is degraded because the people are degraded and the system is degraded and it's on the verge of collapsing, right? And this guy thought, like, it was 1960 and he was going to, do a Kennedy thing, and he just ran to one brick wall after another because he said some stuff that was actually truth or stuff about the vaccines or some of this other stuff, and that'll get you, what he got, right? Like we've all lived with this. We've all had this happen to us on a smaller level since we woke up to whatever, is going on. And once you no longer buy into the official story, even if you're just a bogus, like truther, like a QB or, flat earther or whatever it is, like, you have some, you're not a real truther, but don't buy into the official story, or some woke person, you're some left woke person. Even if you're just that level of person who doesn't buy into the official story, you start being, your life gets a lot tougher. Just when you start realizing they're poisoning you and you have to read the ingredients at the grocery store, life gets a lot tougher. Life is harder now. You no longer can trust the system, and you're looked at as an undesirable, and you see it in every possible way. And if you go public like this clown did with your beliefs, and you try to make them monetize those beliefs, or you use them in an election, this is what happens to you, right? This is what the system is, and we all know it because we went through it, right?
Balloons in a highly produced Chicago circus. There in Chicago, a string of Democratic speakers mentioned Donald Trump 147 times just on the first day.
Okay, so I'm going to play that again for you. I'm going to say a lot of stuff about, I was here before you were, to these guys, right? Because this happens all the time. And I'm saying that personally, but it's just not me. It's so many people in the truth community, because we've been through this for years, right? I've been doing this since 2007, making YouTube videos, and then specifically since 2014, covering this kind of stuff. And as truthers, and even before that, me doing the Sajmark meditation, we lived through this. Like, I've lived through all this kind of stuff, and the way the system is dealing with people that are saying things that are threatening to the beast, right? And narratives that can't be expressed, can't be accepted if the beast is going to continue. But what he just said about the number of times that Trump's name was mentioned, I covered that. So I have this, I'll show you here. There's an audio for it, and then I'll put the compilation there. Okay, so just went on another walk with my wife. We were talking about this, and, I was saying that, Kennedy is describing a system that can't be fixed, and then he's going to go endorse Trump after being rejected by Kamala. Like, I get to all that stuff somewhere in this whole process, right? But this part where he just said that he, that they said 163, Trump's name 163 times during the first night, this is what I've been saying forever. And this isn't Trump derangement syndrome. This is using Trump as an asset, right? And so I covered this. I had this big lie compilation where I got all these pundits and politicians saying the big lie over again, a talking point. And Joe Biden even says in there, they repeat the lie over and over again, which I've talked about in my book, The Choice. The only way to lie is effective if they repeat it over and over again, because otherwise the truth, the divine system is working to expose anything that's not true. And so you have to repeat the lie over and over again to keep it going, like it needs to be, get booster shots, right? But anyways, at the end of the thing, there was a speech in which Biden mentioned Trump 24 times. And Biden was president at that time. He's still talking about Trump, right? Biden's presidency was based in Trump. And Kennedy said these things, that they don't have to have their own platform. They don't have to have their own policies. They don't even have to do their interviews. They can just, go on the hatred of Trump, right? But I've been saying this for years, and not that, this makes me better or whatever. It just makes me more experienced and have a clearer perspective, right? That this is what's happened, that Trump is their asset, and Trump is the catalyst for everything that they do. And so why are they going to get rid of that guy? I can't imagine they will. And if they do, then what's the next iteration of their bullshit? Because then they're going to actually have to have policies. When Trump goes away and you no longer can blame him and talk about him, and there's no other person that can take Trump's place. Trump is a unique character. Then what are they going to do? Like, how are the Democrats going to survive? That's all they have is anti-Trump stuff. My wife said, I wish you could be an advisor. And I'm like, yeah, but there's no advice. There's no system. There's no, There should be no advisors. I mean, they should do in the most subtle way without trying to create panic, communicate to the people that we're fucked and you better start, coming up with a plan B, right? Or maybe just talk about things like gardening and, spirituality, connecting to divinity within you. These are the answers, right? That I'm very clear about. And, these are the things that are going to possibly redeem humanity if it can be done. If it can be done, that's what's going to do it. Their interconnection to God and becoming saints. If being sinners is what's wrecked this world, then being saints is what's going to cure it. That's why I say only spirituality will save this world. And so real leaders would be saying what I'm saying. Not because I'm saying it, because it's the only path, right? It's the right thing. It's the solution. Anyways, here's the compilation.
Is a lie. But this lie, his big lie.
The big lie.
His own big lie.
The big lie. I doubt any of them are stupid enough to believe the big lie.
Of the big lie.
By the big lie. Deranged by the big lie.
Continue to perpetuate the big lie.
That big lie and the big lie, because the big lie.
The big lie is the big lie.
The big lie.
This whole big lie election.
There is a new big lie making the rounds. And big lies, big lie. These big liars
is the big lie.
The big lie is just that, a big lie.
President Trump told a big lie, one of the biggest ever told. This big lie is perpetrate and act upon the big lie that Donald Trump perpetrated the big lie in the face of provable lies. Lies that right now are
continuing. Big lie.
Trump's lies. Conspiracy theorists would rather travel across the country in service of the big lie.
Extraordinarily dangerous to spread the big lie.
Oppose the big lie.
Standing against the big lie. Yeah, I said it.
We know that the big lie was cooked up.
You got the big lie.
About the function of the big lie.
Have been banned from sites like Facebook and Twitter, but his interviews with right-wing media where he continues to repeat the big lie.
They're part of the big lie. Goebbels and the great lie. You keep repeating the lie, repeating the lie. Big lie. People will know it's one thing for one man, one woman, to repeat the lie over and over and over again.
And then I'm just going to show you all the rest of the Trump references here. So that's number one.
It's not a Trump rally. I ran against Donald Trump. An acolyte of Donald Trump. Donald Trump. Because he wanted to hear Donald Trump? He doesn't want to talk about Trump anymore. Well, I do. More on Donald Trump and election integrity. He puts the word Trump, just leveled by Trump. Trump did the same thing. That's who Donald Trump is. Many of you were there. Some of you risked your lives. The anger, the rage. To Donald Trump, no. To Trump, to have swallowed former President Trump's endorses Donald Trump. Donald Trump is the only president. Donald Trump, I love this one. Trump to Donald Trump. He won't stand next to Donald Trump. He won't allow Donald Trump. He's willing to pledge his loyalty to Trump. Is there a problem with Trump? So vote. Vote early. Get 5 of your friends and family to vote.
Even if they're dead or they don't exist.
In Chicago, a string of Democratic speakers mentioned Donald Trump 147 times just on the first day. Oh, who needs a policy when you have Trump to hate?
Exactly. And it's Trump's fault. Like, you can't excuse Trump for that. You're about to back that guy. You're about to back the guy Trump is the center of the universe. I've said this. Trump has been the center of the American political system and even entertainment, news media, for 8 years now, right? They use Trump for everything. And why would they get rid of that guy? Like, that's all they have. Like, he just confirmed what I've been saying forever. Not that I needed it, because it's obviously true. That Trump is the center of their, the media empire and the center of the Democratic Party. They don't have policies that aren't based in, well, ours are better than Trump's, or this is what Trump is doing. So ours has got to be better. They don't have to have an agenda as long as they say, well, at least we're not Trump. And that's their whole political rhetoric. And they got the backing of the system, to make sure that Trump is minimized if he is like president before. Like, Trump couldn't do anything either. And not that he should have been able to do anything, because he sucks and he's a lightweight and, he's stupid. But even when he was president, they had him handled and controlled. And they worked him on COVID, and he capitulated with all these things, right? even though he's probably a little bit more organic and doesn't know he's being controlled because he's, like that would, then he couldn't be Trump, right? Like he has to think that he's legitimate because like they just like pander to him, like they make him feel like he's he's really doing shit. It's like some old guy with Alzheimer's who's capable of let's go garden, Dad, and guys, you hand him a broom in the nursing home, and the guy thinks it's a rake, and he starts thinking he's growing tomatoes, right? Like it's like one of those things.
In contrast, at the RNC convention, President Biden was mentioned only twice in 4 days.
Yeah, but they rolled out this fake, whatever it was, and we all knew that Biden wasn't going to be the guy anymore. And so you're trying to make it sound like Trump has better policies, and he doesn't. What Trump has is his bullshit, conspiracy theories that are masquerade as him being a truther. His bullshit, like the promises he makes that he can't keep, and pretending to be something he's not. Are you going to call bullshit on this false flag event? No, because you're going to go. He gave you a deal.
I do interviews every day. Many of you have interviewed me. Anybody who asks gets to interview me. Some days I do as many as 10. President Trump, who actually was nominated and won an election, also does interviews daily. How did the Democratic Party choose a candidate that has never done an interview or debate during the entire election cycle? We know the answers. They did it by weaponizing the government agencies. They did it by abandoning democracy. They did it by suing the opposition and by disenfranchising American voters. What most alarms me isn't how the Democratic Party conducts its internal affairs or runs its candidates. What alarms me is the resort to censorship and media control and the weapon.
Okay, so they cut this. Very few people saw this part. He's speaking truth here, like he can. And he's good at seeing things the way we see it. But again, like his actions disqualify him from being considered a real truther.
First discussion with President Trump, I tried unsuccessfully to open similar discussions with Vice President Harris. Vice President Harris declined to meet or even to speak with me.
Okay, so why would you do that? Like, why the fuck would you meet with her after saying all the things you just said? I mean, he goes on, saying more. Like what he's saying is good. It's stuff we agree with, right? Why would you meet with her? And if you were being a real truther, why would you meet with him and his freaking fake maxi pad that he rolled out in the RNC? Like, why would you meet with either one of them? Like, if the system's this corrupt, then who gives a shit who wins, right? Like, but only because you want to be a part of something and you got some kind of deal as an advisor to Trump. You got all those kids to give up their lunch money and go out there in 117-degree heat so you could go and be an advisor for Trump, right? After like claiming that you could win and the poll said I was going to win and I was going to win and the system was rigged. Like you didn't know the system was rigged after all the things that you had been through, the censorship bullshit that happened, all the things that you saw. He filed a lawsuit. There was when Biden censored him, Biden went to the social media giants and told them to take Kennedy's stuff off the Twitter and these other things. And he had a lawsuit, and then the Republicans brought him up to Capitol Hill because it was going to undermine Biden, because the Republicans were also, allowing this to happen. And then these, it was Louisiana and Missouri sued Biden, and the judge blasted them because there's this title something or other, and it prevents the social media, these social media platforms from being sued for things that their users put on the internet. So if they could be held liable for things some random person puts up, I mean, you could have a business and you could open some bogus account and then post some slanderous stuff about your business, and then you could sue Facebook, right? And so everyone would be doing that, right? So Facebook said if we had to do that, we'd have to scrutinize every post with a lawyer. And so that would, there's no way you could run your business. And so Biden, there's a title something or other that protects these social media giants from being held liable for what's on their sites, right? And Biden said he was going to take it away if they didn't, his administration did, because he's too brain dead. And Kennedy sued him, and they had this, this whole like hearing, and all the Democrats labeled him as an anti-Semite and a racist, so much so that he had to do that interview with that Rabbi Shmuley and claim about how much he loved the Jewish people, because he claimed that COVID targeted every group but Ashkenazi Jews and somebody else. Remember he said that? And that it was targeting black people. And somehow him saying that the COVID was targeting black people and that and that these other groups were protected from it, Chinese people and whatever, they called him a racist, right? And they just went on and on and on, Debbie Wasserman Schultz and these other people. And so that's how he was treated by the Democrats. I mean, the Republicans are equally as bad because they were using him. And yet he's going to meet with Kamala Harris, after they've screwed his campaign over. They didn't let him run in the primary. He had to leave the party. His father was his father and uncle were some of the biggest stars in the Democratic party's ever had, and they treated him like that. Biden refused to give him Secret Service protection, and yet he met with Kamala freaking Harris, a non-existent candidate that he just described the way. Why would you meet with her? Why the fuck would you meet with her, right?
Suspending my candidacy is a heart-rending decision for me, but I'm convinced that it's the best hope for ending the Ukraine war and ending the chronic disease epidemic that is eroding our nation's vitality from the inside.
It's not going to happen. Trump's not going to do anything. Trump is going to be, the stuff that if Trump was real in the other way, and every way that Trump has been treated up to this point, that he's been used, they're going to attack him the way they just attacked you for the next 4 years. If Trump wins, there'll be riots, there'll be whatever they do, whatever manipulative shit they do to push out their agenda, and Trump will go along with it like he did last time. You're the guy that you're an anti-vax guy, but Trump pushed out Operation Warp Speed, and you're going to go with the guy who made Operation Warp Speed? Like, it's a joke, right?
Bobby, please say a few words. Thank you very much.
So this is what you do, right? After all that bullshit you just said, right? All that, well, some of it was real truther stuff. You're going to join this guy, right?
Thank you.
And, the reason the Democrats didn't want Kennedy being a third party is because they figured there are lots of Democrats, disgruntled Democrats, Bernie Sanders Democrats, and other people that would vote for him, and it would dilute Kamala Harris's voting potential. But those same voters probably aren't going to vote for Trump now, right? And so we don't know if this is going to help Trump or not. It might help him a little bit, but we don't know if him being on the ballot would have helped Trump more, right? Like, it's hard to tell with all these things.
Thank you, President Trump. Thank you. Now, a few hours after the assassination attempt at Butler, I got a call from...
Oh, my God. You seriously? You're really going to... you're going to say all that stuff and you're going to believe that frickin' bullshit thing, right? Really, bro? Like, that's how you're going to do it? Like, you gave a pretty good speech, truthful speech with some issues, but then you went and ran to Kamala Harris when you said all these evil things about her in the Democratic Party, and then you joined Trump, who's, the reason for the Democrats getting away with all this bullshit, right? And then you're going to talk about that, that Ketchupgate, right? It's just stupid.
A safe food advocate named Kelly Means, who's been fighting for many years to try to end the corruption at CDC and FDA and USDA. And these institutions are run by the big food processing companies, the big ag and the chemical companies that they're supposed to regulate. And he said to me that he'd been advising me for many years and on my campaign. And he told me that night that he was also advising President Trump. And he asked if I would talk to President Trump. And I said, of course. And about a few minutes later, I got a call from the president. And we talked. We had a very good talk. And then he invited me to come see him the next day. And I went to Minneapolis and saw him. We met again a couple of weeks later in Florida. And we talked about, not about the things that separate us because we don't agree on everything, but on the values and the issues that bind us together. And one of the issues that he talked about was having safe food and ending the chronic disease epidemic.
Woo! And so I said, you know, maybe we'll do something together. Let me call Kamala first. Let me make sure that the Democrats still don't want me. Woo!
Our children are now the unhealthiest, sickest children in the world. Don't you want healthy children?
Yeah, no.
And don't you want the chemicals out of our food?
No, those chemicals are great. How else are we going to become superheroes, right? Like when that radioactive spider bit Peter Parker, and toxic waste man, like whatever that guy was. You know, it's all these poisons that make you into a superhero.
And don't you want the regulatory agencies to be free from corporate corruption? And that's what President Trump told me that he wanted. He also told me that he wanted to end the grip of the neocons on U.S. foreign policy.
Woo!
He said he didn't want any more $200 billion wars in Ukraine, that we could use that money back here in the United States.
And then he also said, you know what, I don't like this guy, J.D. Vance. He does weird shit in donut shops, which I'll show you in a moment. I'll close with two funny things. And she said, he wanted me to be his vice president. He can just say anything. He's getting rid of J.D. Vance, and he wants me to be his vice president.
And the safest, the best way to build a safe America is to rebuild our industrial base and rebuild the middle class in this country. And he said he didn't want any more $200 billion wars in Ukraine, that we could use that money back here in the United States. And the safest, the best way to build a safe America is to rebuild our industrial base and rebuild the middle class in this country.
Yeah, you already said that, bro.
And don't you want a president who's going to get us out of the wars and who's going to rebuild the middle class in this country?
Woo! The one good thing about this is that he just took a giant crap on all the momentum and all the news press, the press coverage that Kamala is getting, because they actually are covering this. When he first did it, they didn't. But I saw, they brought in some of his relatives to do a hit piece on him, and I'll talk about that when we get through this piece here, right?
And he told me that he wanted to end the censorship, because the whole basis of American democracy is the free flow of information. And we know that a government that can silence its opponents has license for any kind of atrocity. And can you think of any time that you can look back in history and say that the people who were censoring were the good guys? They're always the bad guys, because it's always the first step down that slippery slope to totalitarianism. And don't you want a president who's going to protect America's freedoms not filled with chemicals that are going to give them cancer and chronic disease.
Woo!
And don't you want a president that's going to make America healthy again? Thank you all very, very much, and God bless.
So, so he did that thing. So he came out, he's endorsing Kennedy in these different places, right? I mean, he's endorsing Trump. So I turned on CNN, and they had a couple of his cousins on there shitting on him. Like, Aaron Burnett was talking, and Aaron Burnett actually, like, the guy was just slamming his cousin for being he goes, so you started off being a Democrat, then he became an independent, now he's a Republican. He's all over the place, right? And he said, he had all these signatures that he couldn't prove were legitimate, because Laura Ingraham said that what Kennedy said about the Democratic Party being corrupt, like she sort of paraphrased some of the stuff that Kennedy said, which was interesting that she even, did something like that, because it confronts everything that they've been talking about in terms of how great Kamala Harris is, right? And the guy said, that he's all over the place, and he, couldn't prove these signatures, and once he realized he was going to be thrown off the ballot anyway, he tried to leverage his campaign to get a deal with both the Democrats and the Republicans, and the Republicans offered him the best deal, there's a little truth to that, right? And then his other cousin came on and hammered him as well. And so that's the seedy part about this, right? Because the system is that corrupt. And, I don't have a problem with him embracing President Trump if he really thinks it's going to make a difference, even marginally so. But he talked to Kamala Harris first. Why would you talk to her? Why would you even bother talking to her after all that shit she pulled? Like, why would you ever endorse somebody? Like, he's floating out his potential endorsement. And what he said was she never got voted for. All the things I say, the American people rejected her. And he won't say the stuff that, she, for 10 years, she dated a guy. These were her prime years where she could have had a kid. She could have been married. Like, things that, real people, real women maybe consider, right? They want to have children. They want to have a husband. She dated a guy who was 30 years older than her. She was 29. Dates a 60-year-old guy who's getting out of a marriage. There's no chance of marriage with this guy. And he starts off at 60, and by the time she breaks up with him, he's 70. And during that period of time, he gives her a Mercedes and builds her career, makes her legitimate. And she sold her youth, her, whatever it was, her sexuality. She's hoeing it up here, right? And then, it just is this kind of thing for the rest of the time. She runs basically unopposed for Senate. And then all of a sudden, after really accomplishing nothing but, doing all these like little pretend type of movements she did as district attorney and attorney general in California, a state that's a disaster now, right? And a city that's the worst city. San Francisco's the worst city in the country in terms of where it used to be and what it is now, right? People are leaving the state in droves and going to red states to get away from the policies, rich people. Like they don't want to live in these democratic states and cities and things, right? And after all that stuff, she, she runs for president for no reason. She has no accomplishments, and she tanks. She sucks in the debates. She gets hammered. Tulsi Gabbard takes her to the frickin' behind the woodshed, and the people say, "Oh, we don't like this bitch, right? We don't want to vote for her." The Democratic people, but they make her vice president anyway, right? And they hide her along under a senile president, and then roll her out without a election or primary. And he, talked about some of this, right? And after saying that this is an illegitimate candidate who's been just contrived and forced on the Democratic Party, and the people are lapping it up, he talks to her. He wants to talk to her, and she rejects him. Like he goes, "Oh, I want to talk to you, Trump. I'm in discussion with Trump." Was he trying to leverage for a better position? And Trump isn't even going to make him something. He's not going to put him in the cabinet. He might give him a post. We'll see what happens. I don't know who's going to win this thing. Right now it's trending towards Kamala, right? Before I would have said it was Trump, but they're going to select somebody here, the powers that be. Like somebody's getting screwed. Well, Trump might get screwed because, that'll be part of it, right? Well, Kamala Harris will, this might be it for her. They're using her. They're both being used, right? That's what they do. But why would this guy go to Kamala Harris? I could see why he might want to go to Trump, right? Maybe he could influence Trump's policies, push some of his agenda. That would be a political thing to do. It's not going to work because when Trump gets elected, he's going to be targeted and hated on, and it's just going to be 4 years of it's going to be like 2019 all over again. All the stuff that happened then, it was just going to throw everything at him. And there's going to be world crises and economic crises, and they're going to blame everything on Trump as they blow up the system. Whereas Kamala Harris is, going to continue doing what Joe Biden did, but she's going to be dealing with all these things, right? And so either one of these people is going to get blamed and stuck with the end of America as you now know it. In 4 years from now, it won't be the same America. And Kennedy should know that because, he's got more inside information than me or you or any of these people. And yet he's, calling Kamala Harris up and saying, I'm going to suspend my campaign. What are you going to offer me? Prick? Like, what's wrong with him, right? And so, it's one thing to be a truther, like I said, to say truth or to agree with truth or narratives, but it's another thing to be a bullshitter and an opportunist. And both Trump and Kennedy are that. And Kamala Harris is nothing. So there's no, there's nothing here. It's a waste of time other than for entertainment value and realizing how screwed we are. All right, there's two funny things I want to get to here. Okay, so I believe my wife sent me this. I want to show you two examples of both candidates' teams sucking. So they did an excellent job of using AI to manipulate this conversation in a hilarious way here.
Hi, this is Tim.
It's Kamala Harris. Good morning, Governor.
Good morning, Madam Vice President.
Like that look, just that look. Look at this look. I mean, this is going to be a spoof here. Watch when she does this look when she says her name.
Tim.
It's Kamala Harris. Good morning, Governor.
Good.
Like, look, just... There's something wrong with, that's totally knee pad stuff there. It's almost like this weird, flirtatious kind of crazy lady thing.
Good morning, Madam Vice President.
Listen, you weren't my first choice. To be honest, you weren't even in my top 10. But no one else wants to run as my VP because they all know I'm going to lose. You are the only one who is willing to be my running mate.
Yeah, I mean, this is...
Again, this is sort of like done by Trumpers. There's truth in it, but the opposite, which I'll show you afterwards.
Basically career suicide. But I did some dumb shit a few years back, and now I'm totally controlled by the deep state. And so they told me either I become your running mate or I get Epstein in a New York prison.
Now, the fact that we're both radical communists is a slight problem, but I got some instructions from Big Daddy Barack. Basically, we're going to pretend that you're a normal American white guy. There's a bunch of things you did that we got to run away from here. You passed a law requiring tampons in the boys' bathroom in schools. You basically cheered on the George Floyd rioters who burned down your cities. You implemented a snitch hotline during COVID. And Tim, you signed a law that allows the state to take custody of children if their parents refuse to let them transition. I mean, what the f***, Tim? We got a lot of cleanup to do here. But listen, we already got the mainstream media gaslighting America into thinking that you're super normal.
This is America's dad, America's football coach, and the teacher that's cool enough without trying to be cool.
A lot of people have noticed this sort of down-to-earth, likable quality to him.
Very moderate in Congress.
A moderate Democrat, a centrist, but a more centrist.
Kind of a centrist Midwesterner in persona.
That's pretty funny because I'm weird as f***.
Americans are dumb, Tim. They'll believe anything we tell them.
They are so dumb, right?
They think I'm black. Okay, so here's the plan. In order to hide your own weirdness, we want you to accuse Trump and J.D. Vance of being weird. Just say it over and over again.
Weird, 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 weird. And then they start being weird. They're weird, 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 weird. Donald Trump's weirdness. Very weird, weird. It's just too weird. It's weird, weird. Okay, so how far left are we admitting to being here? Like, are we openly woke?
We have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke. Yeah. No, we're flip-flopping on everything right now. We want to keep the voters confused. You know when your GPS suddenly starts rerouting inexplicably and you have no idea where you're going and you're afraid your GPS might just drive you off a cliff? We're exactly like that.
What do we say if reporters ask us about policy stuff?
Oh, we're not taking questions from reporters, Tim. We're not prepared for that. But if you do find yourself in a tricky spot with a reporter, just cackle.
Cackle.
Yeah, cackle.
You're considered the most liberal United States senator.
Somebody said that, and it actually was Mike Pence on the debate stage. But
yeah, and is that a socialist or progressive perspective?
No. Like, what do you want to know?
Wow, that's horrifying.
Exactly. It's horrifying, but distracting. Okay, so Tim, tell me, your radical left political views, are those real?
Oh, no, of course not. No, honestly, I will have whatever political views you pay me to have.
I love it, Tim. You're like the white male version of me.
You're right. No one voted for me either. Hey, Kamala, let's see what can be unburdened by what has been.
All right, buddy. I'll see you soon. Take care.
Excellent. Well done. Kind of a masterpiece of editing here. But the other side isn't better. That's the problem, right? Like, this is almost hinting that they are, but what they said at the end, people being stupid, well, they fell for Trump as well. This is the problem. When people are this, allergic to critical thinking skills, that's what you get. But then to make things, equal here, I don't know who sent me this. Maybe YouTube recommended it, possibly. J.D. Vance goes into a, well, here, see, this is them saying about him getting weird, right? So they're talking about this guy being weird. Of course, Tim Walz is weird, and we talked about the Weirdathon, which we just saw, that freak show with the DNC. But here...
See charm.
We're going to do 2 dozen.
Okay.
Yep. And just a random assortment of stuff here. How long have you worked here?
I've been here since the beginning of July.
Okay.
For this year.
Okay, yeah. How about you, sir?
Almost 2 years.
Okay, good. How long is it?
Everything.
Just everything, yeah. I mean, a lot of glazed here, some sprinkle stuff.
I just want to say I am socially awkward. And, like, this would be a horrible performance by me. Right? Like, he's just so frickin' strange, right? He is legitimately weird. And it gets worse, right?
Some of these cinnamon rolls, just whatever makes sense. How long has this place been around?
About 4 years.
About 4 years? Okay. How long have you been here?
A little over 6 months.
Okay, good. Yeah, it's when we selected this place, I didn't know if it had been here for 20 years or 4 years or, you never know.
That was brutal, right? And they're just because they're abnormal. And this isn't, he's particularly weird. He's probably the smartest person. I don't know about the eyeliner stuff or the weirdness with that. But he's, really good at articulating things better than all the other candidates. But his weirdness, he's by far the strangest of all of them. Almost like an alien. And, they're all weird. Like, they're all weird in their own way. And this is what you got. These are your choices, America. Just adding to that, to wrap up this video here. And there's other things I need to get to. Like, I thought I was going to cover, it's just, this is a 2-hour video, and I just wanted to make a 1-hour video and get everything off of my my browser, whatever tabs, close all the tabs for this, for the videos. I got things sitting there that have been up there for, almost a week now because of the DNC stuff, right? And, I had to expedite this thing. I have a way that I've developed. If I don't have time to edit these, I do 2 kinds of things. The voiceovers I don't have to edit because if I have a glitch or, I cough or I say something, that's just, I didn't say something very cleanly. Like, it's just, I start babbling or something. I can just edit it out in real time. I'll stop it, I'll erase it, and I'll do it over. While I'll erase the part, that I've just babbled about. This part, this part's a candidate for that, right? But anyways, and when I do the screen flow, I start taping the screen, and then there's things I'm gonna have to edit out. I have to switch between, one video and another video, or one website and another website. There's going to be more glitches and things, more times that there's going to be things I have to edit out. And I like rewatching the stuff because oftentimes when I'm editing, I have more thoughts about something, and I'll say, I'm editing, and I drop something in, right? But I didn't have time to do that with the DNC thing. So what I would do is I would do a clean, when I would do the ScreenFlow thing, if I made a mistake, I would stop it right where I made the mistake, and I knew everything up to that part was clean, and I didn't have to edit it, right? And so that's why I was able to crank out all that content. But, it's not the way I choose to do it, because I like to, at least rewatch the ScreenFlow stuff, because oftentimes I think of more points, and, watching a second time in a more relaxed state, I'm able to, there might some time might pass where I have some ideas or something, right? But anyways, in terms of that, this guy is in a donut shop, and they're shooting this interaction because they want to use it like, oh, we're just normal people having interactions with normal folks, right? Like that's what they want to portray here, that he's in there talking to the donut people and he's polite and he's asking these questions, but that's not a normal that's not a normal, interaction. Like when you go in a donut shop, you don't have those kind of conversations. You might, if you talk to people and you're social, if you're not social, you don't talk like me. Like if they say something to me, we'll talk. I'm not gonna be chatty because I'm not chatty, right? So if I have to be chatty, then I'm gonna be sucky at it, and so I don't do it. But if you are somebody who's chatty, then you figure out what's socially appropriate to talk to the donut people, right? But you're just there to get fucking donuts. You're not there to make friends, And so his line of thought, like this is like, pickup lines when you're trying to create a connection with somebody. It's like trying to pick them up. And his, pickup lines were, how long do you work here? And like, you don't care about how long they worked here. Why do you care? Like, don't ask a question that you don't care about. Oh, yeah, really? You worked here 2 years? Wow. What's your follow-up to that, right? Oh, that's the other person how long the place been open, right? Like, I didn't know if it was open 20 years or 4 years. Yeah, because who gives a fuck? It's a donut shop, right? Like, we were picking a donut shop, and I'm like, I wonder how long the place has been open. I wonder how long the people in there have been working there, right? Maybe if there's something like you're interested in, like what time do you guys get up to make the donuts? Where's, what process? What kind of cooking oil do you use? Because it's going to be, the worst kind. I mean, and, Kennedy just went in about Trump saying that Trump wants to clean up the toxic foods. Those donuts are fried in the polyunsaturated fats, like the worst type trans fat, all this kind of stuff that, that Berg, amongst other people, say is the worst kind of fat, right? And it's just, the fat that's been cooked, these hot oils, these nut oils that are bad for you in a raw form, and they're worse when they've been cooked. And they're sitting there with all the, the burnt stuff in them. And you've seen those oils, the cooking oils that they fry the French fries in and all this stuff. It's like liquid death in there. And Trump wants to make America healthy again, and they're out there getting donuts and being weird, right? So it's just everything you need to know about the whole process here. I mean, the Kennedy stuff, like he actually can say the truth, articulate the truth, and then he runs to try to get a deal with Kamala, right? Like, what the fuck are you doing? And then, they're trying to de-weird this thing, and they roll out this guy at the donut shop, and nobody thought, all right, let's not use this because it makes him look weird as fuck, right? Okay, that didn't go well. Let's erase this tape and pretend it never existed. But they release it, and then they wonder why they're running it on an MSNBC, or that's part of the job is to give the left something to talk about, right? Just like when they roll out AOC and these other dopes, it gives the right something to talk about. So, I mean, the whole thing is just a mess. If you see it getting worse, it is because it is. So it's, it's time to at least consider what a plan B looks like. Because plan A is being 100% dependent on the system. And what's your plan B? And I, like I always say, connecting to the divinity within you is paramount for the future. Whether you believe me or not, that's up to you. Like I just throw it out there, and what you do with it is what you do with it, right? But in terms of your personal ability to figure out, like, there's a survival path for you. There's a path to success for everybody. And maybe you're not going to survive, or, you're going to survive for some period of time, right? And we're all on a path. We're all, dying right now. Like, that's just how it is. We're going to have an end. Our life is going to end at some point. And there's going to be a massive die-off, and, some of us will make it 2 months. Some of us will make us 6 months. Some will make us 10 years, whatever it is, right? But in terms of this transition that's happening from plan A, being dependent on the system, and plan B, the system collapsing and you having to figure it out, like it's, time people start looking into this. I built a website in 2000, 3 or 4, whatever it was, the original Pockets of the Future website, maybe 2000 and, whatever it was. I had built other websites already it was back when front page was available and was easy to use. So I built these front page websites, and one tab on the website was Plan B. I don't even know if I have an image of my crappy websites, but, what's Plan B? Well, what's your Plan B? And I developed all these different, categories and things to think about, like water, like where you're going to get your water. If the system no longer works and you don't, you have water being pumped to your house by the government and that disappears and the electrical grid goes down, you no longer have a water pump. How do you get your water? Because that's the first thing. Because if you don't have water, you're going to a FEMA camp within 2 or 3 days, right? You're going to have to leave your house and you're going to have to find water. Now, if you have a creek or something like that, yeah, you're not going to be able to drink that shit, especially in a post-apocalyptic world. They're making Berkeys, they're calling it a pesticide or something, right? Those Berkey water filters. But, like, what are you going to, what's your system? You're going to need so much water to drink, so, you're going to need water to bathe in, and you're going to need water to flush your toilet. So if you don't have water, then what are you going to do with your human refuse? Like, how are you going to dispose of it? Because you're going to have to get some sort of composting thing going, some sort of an outhouse, because that's the next part, right? So, these are things you're going to have to deal with immediately. Like when the stuff happened in New Orleans, with the Superdome, they had Hurricane Katrina and all those people are stuck up at the Superdome. Human waste almost killed everybody. There was, 10,000, 20,000 people at the Superdome, and they had toilets that weren't flushing, and they were there for a week. And they were stuck in this area, and they couldn't get out. And so, what do you do with your human waste? Because that shit will kill you, right? Literally, that shit will kill you, So, human waste is, like, you can compost it, but it takes a while before it can be used in your garden. You can't just, take your human waste and at least your defecation, your poop, and put it in a garden. It's the stuff that's in there will get into the vegetables, and you'll have salmonella and all these things, right? The only stuff that you can really do that with, I mean, human's the worst, and also all the toxins you have in your system. So it's not really going to be organic if you're eating non-organic stuff, right? But the only stuff you can do that with is rabbit. Only rabbit poop is, instantly compostable, right? Instantly turns into compost. And it's the other stuff you're supposed to wait some time, cow and the rest of these things. But certainly for human, it's the worst. And so what are you going to do? Where are you going to get your water? What are you going to do with your excrement, right? Those are just a couple of things. How are you going to keep cold in the summer? How are you going to keep warm in the winter? If you don't have a heating, these things. So these are all questions. If the grid went down right now, like if you turned off your electricity and you didn't have the ability to run your car, like how would you survive? Where are you going to get your food? All these things. And, there has to be a system. If there's no system, you're either going to, and I'm not saying quit your job and do, I'm not telling anybody what to do here, but just thinking about this, if you're on medication, if you're addicted to caffeine. So let's say the world collapsed and you all of a sudden you got a headache because you're addicted to caffeine. You can't get any, right? What are you going to do? Like, what are you going to do when your medication that you're using for ADHD or antidepressants, those things, you can't just go off that shit cold turkey, or any of the kind of medications you're using to keep your heart going and things like this. Like, you might be at what time, how many medications you taking, and how much of a supply do you have before you're going to have to go cold turkey? And what are you going to do when that happens, right? Like, how many things that are what kind of withdrawal you're going to go through. I mean, these are the things you got to look at. Like, if the system just stopped and you can't get any of these things, and water, food, yeah, sure, heat and cold, climate control, important, right? Hygiene and things like this, because you got you can't just stop taking baths and showers and things, right? I mean, these are all this is the stuff that you got to deal with. And if you don't have any kind of preparation or even thought about it, you don't have a system, even an idea of what you would do, then you're completely fucked. Then you're going to go find somebody to rescue you, and it's going to be the FEMA people, and they're going to march you off to a camp and do whatever they're going to do with you, right? And probably, survival isn't a part of that scenario, but no matter what, it's not good. Like, once you leave your house, you're screwed, right? Once you're, like, out on the streets during a kind of post-apocalyptic shutdown of the system, your chances of survival and, whatever, like people are going to go apeshit. Like it's going to be, there's going to be no rule of law or whatever it might be, right? So all these things have to be considered, right? Every element of that. And if you do have food and water, how are you going to protect it from people who don't? Like that becomes the other thing. Are you going to, are you willing to shoot everybody that is trying to steal your stuff? I mean, people will, right? There's that book by Joel Skousen, Strategic Relocation. The guy builds like bunkers for people. He talks about like what happens is people end up being in a massive horde and they walk up and down a highway. And this happens in other countries, and they consume everything in a 3-mile radius. Thousands of people, they just descend on, local farms. They find cows, whatever it is. They just devour everything like locusts. They walk 3 miles to the left or right of the highway, and they just walk up it, just devouring everything in their path, right? And so, like, what are you going to do about that? Like, are you going to shoot everybody? Like, what is your plans for all that kind of stuff? It's kind of overwhelming. I've thought about these things myself, right? And so, you're going to need some luck and you're going to need some preparation and, you're going to need some whatever it is. But that's why I say connecting to divinity and making yourself somebody who has something to offer in terms of a redemptive movement. Like, what can you do to help certainly yourself and other people, change the way that we do things in the future? Like, what information? I mean, I have, a wealth of information, an understanding of this stuff, why this thing happened. Like I have a clear perspective of why this thing happened and what reason it happened and what we need to do to correct it in the future. And it starts with connecting with the divinity within you. You have the gratefulness meditation, like sitting down, being able to connect to God. And then you'll have like a support team, a spiritual support team, help you navigate through the collapsing system. And so, to me, that's the only thing that's like a mandatory type of situation. But anyways, you do you. So I was originally going to end the video here, but, there's this story about Israel, a little thing about Fuji here. So let's cover those. Okay, last night, Saturday night, I was watching something and I checked on CNN briefly. I think I was looking to see if there's an update on the Kennedy thing. And Wolf Blitzer came in. He's a regular 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock guy or whatever it is. On the weekdays, he came in to have breaking news that Israel launched strikes against Hezbollah.
With the overnight breaking news, Israel and Hezbollah trading military strikes as the United States and the world brace for the potential of a wider war in the Middle East. We've got 2 reports this morning. Let's begin with NBC's Danielle Hamamdjian in Jerusalem.
Hamamdjian.
Danielle, what's the latest there?
Good morning.
Looks like they're pretty chill there, right?
Willie, what it all happened before.
Doesn't look like there's a lot going on in Israel. Let's go see the other guy. Oh, they don't have the other guy. They just have the report from Israel. That's all they put up on this news article. They don't have the other guy from Lebanon. I mean, he was there, but they just didn't post it here.
Overnight, Israel launched a large series of airstrikes against Hezbollah using about 100 fighter jets, more than 40 targets in southern Lebanon, according to the IDF. Israel says the strikes were preemptive and targeted Hezbollah rockets and firing canisters that were...
Okay, again, preemptive strikes. So they can just say, oh, yeah, people are attacking us. They could always make that excuse, right? They can always pretend that, oh, yeah, they're going to hit us. They're going to... It's like pre-crime in that movie where, Tom Cruise movie, Minority Report, where, yeah, they were definitely going to hit us with something. So we hit them first. We're the victims. We're the victims, guys. They're not the victims. We're the victims. They were going to hit us first. Yeah, you trust us. We're trustworthy. So this is where Lebanon is, right? Lebanon's here. You have Israel, which is here. Lebanon's up top here. This is Beirut, where Israel is. Lebanon's here. And Syria and these other countries are there. Israel's secretly trying to annex the West Bank while the dispute over Palestine rages, right? And, this whole region, we talked about the Greater Israel. This is all that, Lebanon, Syria, Iraq. I mean, this is all what Israel thinks God promised them. The Zionists, at least, that's what they think. And then here, Gaza's 2.2 million people are confined to a humanitarian area smaller than Manhattan. There was a guy on, I think, MSNBC. I just watched it about 15 minutes ago. And he was talking about how Israel was going to just wait it out till Trump got elected because Trump's going to give them a green light on everything. But now, because of everything that's happened with Kamala Harris's surge, they probably are trying to undermine Joe Biden's peace plan maybe a little bit. Have some, they definitely want Trump, right? Anything they can do to push the electorate towards Trump, where Trump will just give them a free pass to go and do whatever they want over there. And the other thing is Dr. Fauci recovering at home after hospitalization for West Nile virus. Like, WTF, right? Like, how did that even happen? I mean, it's a rare thing for people to get, but Fauci somehow got it. Those guys are always getting sick. Remember that CDC lady? She had COVID like 10 times. She couldn't get rid of COVID. These guys are all getting sick. These doctors heal thyself, right? So anyways, I just want to add those. And of course, that's the other problem. The big problem for both Trump and Kennedy is their support of Israel, which is, I mean, as soon as they were talking about this might get Iran and America involved. And it's just a matter of time. There's going to be something that's escalating there. And Israel's getting attacked on all sides, or they're expanding on all sides. They're the aggressor, and they want all that land, and, they want to probably rope the U.S. into helping them, provoking a war in that area that they can obliterate these countries around them and then seize as much land. They certainly want the West Bank and Gaza. But who knows, what else their agenda is, but it's probably to get all the land of Greater Israel that the Zionists believe is their right, and they're just going to keep on expanding. And then Russia will get involved if Iran gets involved, and then that's it. It's World War III. And so, and either Kennedy or Trump are willing to, talk truth about Israel to prevent something like that. And that's what it would take America a president to say, hey, we are not going to support this shit, right? You better get your shit together. We're going to suspend aid for your military and everything else. Because without America, they'd be done. America's just, their lifeline to surviving in a really tough region. Anyways, let's wrap this one up here. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Baramano, definitely pointing to the apocalypse. And the ascension, everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.